So we have signed here our initials on the bottom of page 2, and this is coming into spilling over to the settlement date, and that is the date that we are going to sign the documents. So here we are in this note. See paragraph 12, delay in settlement closing for conditions under the settlement may be delayed. So we also, I like to let my buyers know when we submit this contract and we say in the contract that we are closing on the 25th of May, the 15th of June, whatever it is, just understand that there could be a delay. But in the delay, they give us a 7-day grace period, to get everything rectified and do everything that we need to do to get the necessary paperwork, addendums, everything in to the attorneys, the CDs reconcile, the numbers reconcile, and all of that good stuff. We have 7 days from the date that we put in that contract, or we could be in breach as the buyer side. So this section here with the closing is just stating that everything is completed. All this 1, 2, 3, 4 sections in here, all these things have been completed and we are ready to close. So we just need to make sure all this, the completion of this legal process is done, and it cannot, between the seller and the buyer, and we can't close until all this stuff is done. The settlement is to define the completion of a satisfactory title. The sellers need to make sure that they produce, and the attorneys will run that search to make sure that the title is clean and it's marketable to convey. The closing attorney's receipts of authorizations to disperse all necessary funds, and the recordation in the appropriate county registry of deeds and the deeds of trust, if any, which shall take place as soon as reasonably possible for the closing attorney after settlement. So we just need to make sure that everything is done in order to bring this to a complete closing. And the last of the last, of course, is that the paperwork and everything that we have done and created throughout this transaction is signed at settlement and placed in the hands of the courts, and the courts record those documents and the deed, and that's when we have fully exhausted and closed on this property. So in this section here it is a warning, and it is saying that the settlement, the recording of these documents, it cannot be done by anyone other than someone that an attorney that is licensed to practice law in the state of North Carolina. They could be licensed in another state, but in order for them to make this legal, this little step right here can make or break anything. We done got done, and we done everything, and then now, and even if the attorney's license, let's just say it's expired, we need to just make sure that this attorney that we use is reputable, they're legitimate, of course, and that they're licensed, because I've dealt with that with a contractor, licensed contractor at one point in time, but by the time that he got to me, actually he was licensed, but during this time of the renovations, he lost his license. I didn't know, and that's a whole nother story. So we just need to make sure that we are using a licensed professional attorney that is licensed in the state of North Carolina, that there are other paralegals and different other assistants in the office, that they don't have to be an actual attorney, but there needs to be an attorney in any other party in there. There needs to be an actual licensed North Carolina licensed attorney that's working in that actual office. Like I said, again, in any other parties, they can perform any other different services, have you sign or, come in and collect earnest money deposits and things like that. No problem with them working with and for that attorney. But at the end of the day, there has to be an attorney, licensed attorney on site. So this next section is the special assessment section, and this is a charge against the property by a governmental authority, in addition to the ad valorem taxes, recurring governmental services fees levied with such taxes or by an owner association, in addition to the regular assessment dues, either of which may be a lien against the property. So we want to make sure that there isn't any, and with the title search it'll come back if there's any outstanding HOA dues, any outstanding taxes that hasn't been paid, any something, a second mortgage or whatever that's levied on the property, any governmental assessments, all of that stuff will come up. So this is what this section is saying that we are going to check out as well. And this note is stating that the buyers and the sellers' respective responsibilities for the payment of any special assessments are addressed in paragraph 6A and 8.1 as well. So usually we're prorating taxes and association fees and things like that. So what we're talking about is prior to some delinquent things that is responsible, the sellers is responsible for. But anything that is current, everything is going to be prorated, that the sellers is going to pay for their portion while they lived in the house, and the buyer is just going to be responsible for the day of closing and after that. So now we're going to start getting into a little bit about this property here, the fixtures and exclusions. So here again we have another warning. It says that the parties should not assume that an item will or will not be included in the sale based on an oral or written statement, or understanding that it is not a part of this contract. Buyer and seller should be specific when negotiating what items will be included or excluded from this sale. So I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. We are not just assuming that we went to that beautiful home and looked at it and they had a nice manufactured home on the site and they had this beautiful riding lawnmower, because we are on 5 acres of land. We cannot assume because the house is empty. However, there is a washer and dryer left there and an additional refrigerator. They could have just forgot, they could have forgot, or they could be, coming to get those items back closer to closing, something like. So we just can't assume. We have to make sure everything is documented. So we need to address that, and it has to be in that additional provisions addendum, and even sometimes let's just say the MLS did not state that these extra items was going to be on there, but when we went, you got so excited because of riding lawnmower or whatever. We can negotiate and we can ask them for it. Even though they didn't offer it, we can ask them for it, and if they agree, again, we just need to reduce that into some type of writing addendum, which is the additional provisions addendum, stating that yes, we agreed, even though it wasn't in the actual sale of the home, but we have agreed at this point that that it will convey for whatever terms we came up with. Okay, this is the fixtures that are included in the purchase price, and all existing features are included in the sale as part of the purchase price, free of liens unless excluded in subparagraphs D or E. So we're at the end of page 3, and guess what? Buyer needs to initial, sellers need to initial. So here we are in the specified items in this area, in this section. So the buyers and the sellers agree that the following items, if present on the property on the date of the offer, shall be included in the sale as part of the purchase price. Free of liens unless excluded in subparagraph D or E below. All items listed below include both traditional and smart versions and any exclusively dedicated related equipment and or remote control devices. So this is pretty specific here in this area, and we're just going to make sure we know that everything that's in this area is conveying, it's pretty obvious. So this is what this is saying. So all of this that is there, all of these items that is there on the property, this is what's conveying. So, and this section is talking about the prior to closing, that the seller shall unpair any devices that will convey from any personal property devices, hubs, intelligent virtual assistants, mobile devices, vehicles, etc. So if you have anything on this property that's any item here, that it needs to be unpaired. Get all your information off of there. Delete everything that's on there. You're going to keep it like a, system, the Vivid systems and things like that. You want to undo, unpair all of that stuff if it's conveying with the property, and delete any data or, from the devices, any of your personal stuff. This is what this section is saying. And here we have a note. Any fixture or other item described in subparagraph A and B that will not be a part of this sale should be identified in subparagraph D or E as applicable. So again, if there's anything that's in this sections that's not conveying, we need to let that be known. This is the section here where we're going to put any lease items or not owned. And let's see here, in any item which is leased or not owned by the seller, such as antennas, satellites, dishes, and receivers, appliances, and alarms, and security systems must be identified here and shall not convey. So anything that the sellers is going to take, we've seen it, yes, it's there, but they're leasing it, they don't own it, so they can't sell it because they don't own it. It needs to be addressed in this section here. So this is where we would place all of those items, so we would know we're not responsible for that. You're not paying. You can't just leave it here and then they're coming to the house, looking for it, and we don't own it, as the buyer. So in addition, any leased fuel tank identified in paragraph 7D shall not convey. So here are some additional items here that do not convey. So we want to place in this section all of the items that do not convey. A lot of this leased items, we need to identify that. The sellers need to identify those items to them so we can make sure that they remove all of those items that are leased, because that is their property. Whether they, live in that particular property or not, they need to take that with them so they can continue to make whatever payments on it, or either, make up something that, if it's something that you want as the buyers, maybe we can do a transference and you can take over that. But everything, again, needs to be discussed, negotiated, and agreed upon, and we need to have that in addendum so all parties can sign. Now this is stating that the sellers must repair any damage caused by removal of any items excluded above in a good and workmanlike manner. The seller will notify the buyer upon completion of such repairs and provide buyer with documentation thereof, if any. So, if they're taking their TV off the wall or whatever they may do, they could be, moving a heavy equipment, let's say workout bike, like I have a Peloton, and it's like, woo, goodness gracious, that is one of the heaviest equipments I've ever seen in my life, and they accidentally let it fall and it put a hole in the wall. They need to make good on that and take care of that particular hole or that chip or whatever, because that wasn't there when we submitted this offer. So they just need to make sure that they repair any damages that they do to the home when they move from the home, from them just moving their own furniture, or from them taking down items from the walls and in holes and any other things that could happen. Okay, here's a note that is saying buyers advised to consider attaching the additional provisions addendum if buyer has a specific request as to how the repair should be completed. So again, if this is something major, the buyers might want you to get that done by a professional, not just you taping it up yourself. So if there is something that we will add that, attach it to the additional provisions addendum that we want to see that was done by a licensed professional, you know. So again, we are at the bottom of the page. Initials are required. Again, initials is signifying that you're understanding everything that has been stated previously.